Hiya. Yeah, so as mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the consumer spyware market. This is not financially driven malware for cyber criminals or lawful intercept for governments. This is remote access Trojans for just a normal person. That might be to monitor your child, your employees, or the context I'm going to talk about it in is monitoring your wife, husband, lover, spouse for spying on them domestically and how that's linked to violence. And I apologize in advance for my coldy voice. So just about me, I'm a journalist. I'm not a security professional or researcher. I used to work for Motherboard, which is the tech section of Vice. That's where I did most of this consumer spyware work. And then I just recently moved to the Daily Beast, which is a US political news site. I see you. That's the message that Jessica received on her phone when her ex-husband planted malware, first on her computer and then on her mobile phone, an Android device, I believe. He could read her text messages, track her GPS location, and I think read her emails as well. When she said she would go to one place and then she would go somewhere else, he would send this message, I see you. In one particularly violent case, the ex-husband sexually assaulted Jessica. And then during the incident, he made reference to text messages that he had intercepted, presumably or supposedly between her and a man she was flirting with as a single woman. I mean, that was a particularly egregious example of how this malware can be used domestically, but it's far from the only case. I mean, when it first started, this sort of consumer spyware, it was your usual executables attached to an email. You send them, maybe you pretend to be a interactive greeting card or something. The person downloads it, opens it up, and installs the rat on their device. And there were various media reports, like in the mid-2000 onwards, maybe a little bit earlier, where a man was accused of using the software to spy on his wife. In the UK, there was a man who planted malware on her PC and found out there were communications between her and a man whose marriage was also failing, and the husband ended up stabbing her, murdering her, stabbing her several times in the chest. And then you have many more examples of men just spying on the wives into their browsing activity. And I suppose I should just say now, I was going to mention it later, but this isn't just husbands spying on wives. We have evidence, as I'll go into later, of wives spying on husbands. I don't have any data of the spread, but from what I understand, speaking to domestic violence shelters, at least primarily the cases we've come across are husband on wife. And then, obviously, as smartphones became more popular, these companies started offering spyware for Android and iPhone devices. I think it's either this case or that one, I can't remember which, but the malware was used to get a leg up on the divorce proceedings, so the husband could then find out what the wife was trying to go after and intercept these communications between the wife and her lawyer. But, I mean, a tiny minority of the instances of this happening are going to make their way into a media report. According to an NPR study, and then one from domestic violence shelters, they surveyed, I think, 70 shelters, and 75% said that they were dealing with people that had some sort of tracking app on their phone or their computer. So a huge number of cases are going through shelters, but they don't typically get reported. So to get a better idea, I bought some of this malware that's typically sold to or marketed for this use. This was SpyPhone Rec Pro, I think, for $170, which is relatively expensive for malware in this market. It's pretty simple. You get physical access to the device. You go to a domain. You download an APK. You turn off the install from untrusted sources setting on Android, and then you're good to go. You just type in a subscription code as well, because many of these malware companies will sell 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, a year long subscription packages to continue getting money out of their customers. And some of you, no one in particular, just whenever I bring this up, these are sort of the reactions I get. This is pretty crap malware. It's not sexy, it's not sophisticated, you need physical access, it is really technically boring, and it is, truly. But that would be to misunderstand the threat that the people who face this malware face. I mean, these people are going to be in the same building, the same room, maybe even the same bed. So a physical access threat is a legitimate issue that these people need to face. And then you could say, well, just don't give your phone to your husband or your wife, put a passcode on, that sort of thing. One case described to me by someone who's familiar with it, I'm trying to think how to explain this. For lack of a better word, the wife gave consent. The husband said, look, if you really love me, I want to protect you, you have to let me install this malware on your device. I'm the one that loves you, and I'm the one that's trying to protect you. So she installed this stuff on her Android phone, and that's how then she was tracked. The point I'm trying to make here is the threat is a lot more complicated than your typical Android security threat or your smartphone security threat. This is an overlap between physical and digital security, which you may not always see in your line of work or industry. Back to my malware, I took it out on a touristy day out around Berlin, took some photos. Every 10, 15 minutes, maybe an hour, the malware will grab the photos and email them to an address you specify, or you can send, the attacker can send a text message to the phone, and then it will just exfiltrate the data whenever they feel like it. And then you just have the SMS message, it's intercepted, the longitude and latitude of the GPS locations, and then a handy little map you can click on to show exactly where that person was located. Now, there are dozens of companies that sell this sort of malware. I definitely haven't seen all of them. I imagine other journalists and researchers working in the space have not seen all of them either. But just to give a few examples, TruthSpy, XNSpy, HeisterMobile, and HelloSpy. And some of these will market explicitly to, you can use this to spy on your wife or husband, and others will say, like it does here with MobiStealth, oh, this is for children and employees only, so our hands are clean. I phoned up MobiStealth and asked, hey, can I use this to spy my wife? Yes, you can. Do I need her permission? No, you just need physical access. So even though they advertise it for certain use cases, first of all, you can't stop the end user from doing whatever they want with malware. I mean, that's a problem with the lawful intercept industry as well as the consumer spyware one. But some of these companies will just tell their customers, yeah, sure, you can do whatever you want with it as well. MobiStealth also offers a non-jailbroken iPhone solution, but it's not actually malware. All it is a tool that will go into the target's iCloud account and download, their call logs, their photos, text messages, all of the sort of thing that's backed up by default in iCloud. Again, it's a lame attack. You need the passcode and the Apple ID to do it. But again, I don't know, maybe married couples share passwords in some instances. Maybe it's written down on a notebook and the husband or wife can easily find it. I mean, to shrug off that sort of attack would be, again, to ignore the sort of threat model that we're dealing with here. So I'm just going to focus on one company in particular called FlexiSpy because it's probably the largest, if not, well, one of the largest. And it's also the company we know the most about. In 2017, a hacker targeted FlexiSpy, stole a load of data and gave it to me and a colleague at Motherboard. So we could see the inner workings of this company and its motivations that it may not put so public facing. And just to give you an idea of the sort of capability that FlexiSpy is trying to offer, one of its catchphrases is, know everything that happens on a computer or smartphone, no matter where you are. And that's just some of the data that the hacker gave us. Email addresses of customers, so we can see who was buying this software, spreadsheets, documents, files, malware code, all that sort of thing. Some company emails, but we honestly didn't get many of them, so didn't really report on them. And there's just some partial credit card information as well that obviously we didn't publish or do anything with, but just to give you an idea of how thoroughly these guys got absolutely owned. This is a roadmap of FlexiSpy's development. They started with Symbian phones, moving on to Blackberries, Androids, iPhones, the typical sort of chronology you would expect from a company in this space. This is actually FlexiSpy's own roadmap. I didn't make this. This was included in the documents. And then just briefly, I mean, there is another talk here about FinFisher. Early on, FlexiSpy had some sort of connection to FinFisher. So there is overlap between the consumer spyware business for these wives and husbands and kids and employees, and then the ones that are using more sophisticated malware and 0 days to target activists and criminals and terrorists as well. We're not sure if they did end up working together, but this was a proposal document from FlexiSpy saying, oh, hey, we will make the server-side code and I think a part of the implant for the Symbian phones. And then someone familiar with FinFisher confirmed to me that, yeah, FinFisher was looking for that sort of thing at the time. But back to the malware, it said know everything on a phone, and they're not joking. There's WhatsApp, Line, Skype, WeChat, iMessage, anything you could possibly want to extract off that phone, FlexiSpy is going to be able to do it. Text messages as well, delete SMS messages, read emails, intercept live calls, remotely switch on the microphone, remotely switch on the camera, so you can turn it into a hot mic, and then FaceTime as well. And a feature that I'm not sure you would want to use maybe if you were spying just on your kids or your employees or doing some sort of legitimate surveillance, you can send fake text messages as well. And this is from FlexiSpy's own marketing on its website, I believe, and the text says something like, hey, sorry, but you can't come over, my wife came home early, which is clearly marketing towards the affairs sort of demographic. And then keeping with the consumer spyware sort of crowd, this is the graphical user interface you see when you log in. You just go to portal.flexispy.com or something like that, type in your username and password, and you can easily see the text messages intercepted, the emails, the calls recorded, their last GPS locations on the map, the photos, and anything else. And then just a few weeks ago, FlexiSpy introduced an app that you can use, so the attacker will install it on their own phone, and they can just look at all the siphoned or intercepted data that way, so they can do it wherever they may be. I haven't tried this, but I have no reason to believe that it doesn't work. But you can just see how they're constantly updating and constantly trying to cater to their given audience. One of the things that separates FlexiSpy from the rest of the market was that until at least recently, they were really explicit in their marketing towards jealous lovers, spouses, that sort of thing. So many spouses cheat, they all use cell phones. Their cell phone will tell you what they won't. FlexiSpy removed a lot of this marketing after media reports into the company recently, and they also asked the Internet Archive to remove all crawls off their website. So you can't go through FlexiSpy right now and find evidence of this, but luckily journalists and researchers have taken screenshots as well. This is I just said that about the Internet Archive. This is a screenshot before FlexiSpy asked the Internet Archive to remove it. This is a survey that FlexiSpy apparently did of its own customers, and you can see over 50% is, the reason I would be interested in using your product is because I believe my partner may be cheating. The rest are, I need to monitor my employees, I want to keep an eye on my children, the other things you would expect. But clearly the majority, if the survey is accurate, were looking into the product for this sort of domestic spying purpose. And it's no accident. In the internal documents we obtained, FlexiSpy had clearly done a lot of search engine optimization research. These are some of the terms they were looking for in English: cheating wife, wife cheating, cheating husband, etc. And then the same, but in Russian. They seemed particularly keen on breaking into the Russian market, but they had about 3, 4, 5 competitors in that space, and I I don't know how successful FlexiSpy was in breaking into that market, but this is a global thing, and they weren't just going to cater to the English language crowd. But rather than take that survey or the marketing at face value, I spoke to people who say they have used it to spy on their husbands or wives. Using those emails, I just contacted a load of people and said, hey, did you know FlexiSpy's been hacked? No, they haven't told us. Well, okay, first it's been hacked. And I have your customer data. Can we chat and why you use this product? Obviously giving them anonymity because I kind of valued their responses over identifying these random people. I don't think that would be particularly fair. But one says I bought it to see if my boyfriend was cheating. Another one said they used it to spy on their ex-girlfriend and apparently catch her in the act. I mean, presumably meaning cheating on him with a remote recording of her. I couldn't verify that, but that's what they claimed. And then possibly the most bizarre one was that someone said it's normal to plant spyware on your spouse's device and then monitor them. And these were, from all intents and purposes, totally ordinary people. There were some law enforcement officers in there, and we've reported on that as well, and it looks like they were using FlexiSpy possibly for criminal investigations, which is legitimate and fine. But there was a 5th grade teacher in Washington, D.C., professional dog breeder from Georgia, and then the president of a sunglasses distributor in New York. And as you can see, the concentration there is in the States, but this is a worldwide phenomenon. As well as FlexiSpy, hackers also targeted a company called RetinaX, and they managed to get the actual content that was exfiltrated from the malware, so photos, text messages, that sort of thing, as well as GPS locations of the targets, the infected phones. So they gave us those. I just did a quick script to obviously obfuscate the actual GPS locations. I wouldn't share those, but they're everywhere. South America, South Africa, West Africa, through Europe into Southeast Asia. As I mentioned, this is a totally global trade. Even though the majority of the websites may be in the English language, clearly people across the planet are buying and using this malware. I think in total, we got information on 130,000 accounts, which include a FlexiSpy and RetinaX, but that's probably not representative of how many customers they actually have. The way FlexiSpy was hacked, the hacker went in and basically enumerated through the customer portal whichever emails were available to them, but from what we understand, they probably actually have more customers as well. And a lot of those people are going to be breaking the law. I mean, in the US, it is a criminal offense to intercept communications if you don't have a warrant or if you don't have consent, just to put it very generally. I'm not a lawyer. The US DOJ has charged people, at least one person, for using this sort of spyware. In this case, a woman planted it on the phone of a law enforcement official and intercepted communications that were private, but also law enforcement privileged, which the skeptic in me thinks that's probably the only reason that the DOJ actually went after this person, was because they actually implicated an official. And then, just very briefly on this business side, there is a vibrant community of YouTubers and bloggers who get money from advertising this piece of software. So in this terribly acted video, apparently of Susan, she says how great the malware is, and oh my God, I don't know how I lived before FlexiSpy, and I caught my husband, and it's just the best thing ever. Please buy it from this link, which I get 20% of. And then you'll follow through the referral links, and you'll find they end up going to the same people. There will be, I'm not sure, maybe 4 or 5 different YouTube channels, but then they all go to the same affiliate link. So clearly it's the same person trying to generate income from this as well. And then mSpy is just mentioned there, which is a company I didn't really go into, but they're another of the large ones, but they don't market for spouses or lovers, at least recently, as far as I know. And then even if FlexiSpy sells its malware, and you may say, no, that's not for me, I'm going to go somewhere else, you may inadvertently be buying the same code, because FlexiSpy offers just its malware, but as a white label. So you can take it and then say I'm a FlexiSpy reseller, or you can take it and then say, hey, I'm now Spousebusters 3000, and this is my own malware, it's really, really great, please buy it from me. And the resellers are based all over the world, Israel, India, Australia, the US. FlexiSpy itself is based in Thailand, but they're all over the place. I blurred out the company names because I couldn't verify that every single one was a reseller. I mean, it's an internal document, but you don't know whether it's a work in progress document or some other caveat to it. So I confirmed one that was called Spousebusters in Australia, but the rest I just blurred out for that purpose. And as well as the users who may be breaking the law if they're intercepting without a warrant or without consent, or whatever it may be, the companies as well are likely breaking at least US law. A company called StealthGenie that was marketed to spouses and lovers. It was a Danish citizen who I think was Pakistani born, and the reason the US took it was because the website was on some Amazon web server in Virginia. So there you go, now you have US authorities after you. That person pleaded guilty, was obviously convicted for their crime, and just got, as you can see, that $500,000 fine. No prison time, as far as I know. So that may not sound like that much of a big deal when it comes to punishments, but you have to remember then this person presumably has all the other things that come with being a convict, which is, you can't enter the US as easily, you may get deported, whatever it may be. The FBI has no files on FlexiSpy. I did a check and they said, no, we don't. Well, they implied they weren't investigating them. They just said they didn't have any documents related to that company. And this is the only one that the DOJ has charged and prosecuted. In 2014, when they did it, the DOJ threw a big fanfare and released a good-looking press release and said, look, this is the first time we've ever done it, and it's 2017, they haven't done another, and dozens of these companies still exist. That was it. I tried to keep it a bit short and sweet. If you ever want to chat about anything off the record, or you have details on one of these companies, be it lawful intercept or the consumer spyware, you can chat to me anytime. And especially if you have stories, or you know someone who may have stories about this malware being used in domestic violence, I'm trying to continue to talk to those people to get a better understanding of what exactly they're